have to decide what matters to you. I mean, obviously, he did not play in a Super Bowl, and Eli Manning won 2 Super Bowls. Who would you say was a better quarterback throughout their career, Eli Manning or Phillip Rivers?
Phillip Rivers.
Eli Manning will likely get into the Hall of Fame based on 2 Super Bowl wins.
Which shows you how stupid it is. That's how screwy it is. Eli had 4 great moments. Phillip had like 7 really good years. 8 years.
More than that.
Yeah.
More than that. So, again, it depends. And I understand both sides. But to me, there's not going to be many quarterbacks with Phillip Rivers' career.
That's fair. I like Phillip. I like Eli. All right, here we go. Let's start with Green Bay, Tampa Bay. It's really remarkable. As I watched the Packers play Sunday and saw 71% of the plays had motion, all I could think of was, this is not a good look for Mike McCarthy. Because all these players were here 2 years ago, Greg, and the offense did not look like this. There's got to be a coaching. Matt LaFleur is doing something special.
Oh, without question. And in fact, the difference is this. The difference is that now this offense is a highly schemed offense in terms of personnel, formations, motion, progression reads. Because of Rodgers and Devontae Adams and other players like Valdez-Scantling, who is a matchup type player, it still has the matchup element to it. So when Rodgers sees matchups that he likes, and we always think of Devontae Adams, and obviously, in my view, he's been the best receiver in football this year. He can still attack those matchups, but it's much more highly schemed in a number of different areas this year, and that makes this offense really difficult to handle because Rodgers is obviously a great, great player. Oh, by the way, I think he'll be in the Hall of Fame.
Yes, he will. I'd put him in today. Now, he had his worst quarter as a pro in Tampa. Let's go back to that game. Do you believe it was just a random Sunday, or can the Bucs, with Vita Vea coming back, do you think they'll duplicate the pressure they got on Aaron Rodgers?
I never think anything in the NFL is just random or fluky. I think that they created a lot of the issues with all their multiple fronts, their pressure looks, tying in coverage with pressure. But there's no question that the Packers will look at that game closely and they'll be better prepared. Now, Todd Bowles won't do exactly the same thing. No coach does exactly the same thing in a second meeting with a team, but I'm sure he'll still have different front looks. He will have pressure concepts, and the Packers will be far more prepared for it in this game. The question to me is, what will be the Packers' approach? Last week against the Rams, they were really balanced. If you remove the kneel downs at the end of the game, they had 37 called passes and 32 called runs, which by NFL standards is incredible balance. They run the football because that's Matt LaFleur's background. He comes from the McVay-Shanahan background. So I'm curious to see what the Packers' game plan approach going in is.
You tell me, athletically, talent-wise, the Bucs had success, their offense against the Packers' defense. How does the Packers' defensive personnel and schemes match up against Brady, do you believe, on film?
Well, that's a great question because here's what I would think would happen. I think because we're not sure about Antonio Brown, I think you're going to see a lot of 12 personnel, meaning 1 back and 2 tight ends with Gronkowski and Brate. Brate's become a factor the last number of weeks. We know that Mike Pettin, the defensive coordinator for the Packers, would much prefer to play in his sub-defenses, meaning nickel and dime, 5 DBs or 6 DBs. They've, in fact, played with 6 defensive backs, far more than any team in the league this year.
Wow.
So if the Bucs line up with 2 tight ends, what will Mike Pettin do? Will he line up in base personnel, which he does not like to do, or will he line up with 5 or 6 defensive backs? At times in that first matchup, week 6, he lined up with 6 defensive backs versus 2 tight ends. To me, that personnel matchup will be critical to this game.
Last 2 games for the Bucs, they're running the football. Is it health? You tell me, is it because guys are healthy, because the offensive line's getting more of a push? They've been very effective running last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think they realize with that O-line that has struggled at times throughout this season in pass protection that they do need to have some semblance of a run game. Ronald Jones obviously gives them some juice. You saw the difference last week. Fournette, he just does not look very good. I know he's had some success, but he certainly does not look anything like he did coming out of LSU. So Jones gives them a little more juice in that run game.
I like Green Bay in this game. What's the film tell you?
Yeah, I do too. These games are hard for me. I'm not a good picker of games, Colin, because I can give you 5 or 6 reasons on either side. But I mean, you asked me, I would pick Green Bay to win this game.
All right, let's go to Buffalo, Kansas City. It's funny. I said all through December, Buffalo's the best team in the NFL. But then you get to the playoffs and you face better coaching, better coordinators, and better units. And over the last 2 weeks, I started inspecting Buffalo and they can't run the ball at all now.
No.
At all. And I think to myself, boy, they're becoming really Josh Allen reliant. Does it look like that on film?
Oh, yeah. Last week, their first 20 plays were called passes. They didn't call a run until the 21st play of the game for their offensive snap. So, I mean, Josh is playing well. I mean, obviously, last week, they only scored 1 offensive touchdown. The Ravens did not blitz as much as I thought. I think Steve Spagnuolo, who's known to be very aggressive and has been this year, I think you're going to see pressure. Now, obviously, he's going to have to feel comfortable in the secondary because one thing the Bills do a lot of is line up with 4 wide receivers. They do that close to 20% of their offensive snaps. So I don't know how he'll feel about matching up in the secondary versus 4 wide receivers. But this team is Josh Allen's team right now. They throw the ball. They want to throw the ball. They do it by choice. They put him in the gun. He's got second reaction ability, so they do feel that if there is pressure, he can somehow get out of it to make a throw or a run for a meaningful play. I don't think they're going to change that. They're not going to come out with Allen under center and hand the ball off to Devin Singletary 20 times. Yeah. That's not going to happen. So I think Steve Spagnuolo will be aggressive.
I want to talk about Mahomes. I was kind of blown away. He limped in the first half. He left with 7.5 minutes in the game, and they won. If you had taken Baker out, 8 minutes to go in the third, Cleveland's getting shelled. I was shocked at the ease, especially on the perimeter, of Kansas City's offense against a very good Cleveland roster. I tend to think NBA teams are better at the flip the switch thing. I didn't like December, what I saw from the Chiefs. Did the film tell you it was as effortless and easy as it looked on television?
Well, the Browns do not have a great secondary. That's the thing. And we're going to assume Mahomes plays. I mean, I can't believe he's not going to play. So let's talk about Mahomes for a minute. Number one, he has not been great over the last month or so. He's been a little loose, a little undisciplined. He obviously can compensate and camouflage for that with great second reaction plays, but it hasn't quite happened as much. So it'll be interesting. But one thing, and this is kind of an X and O point, but it's a very difficult matchup, Colin, for teams, is when they line up Kelsey as the single receiver to the short side of the field, and they go 3 wide receivers to the strong side of the field. Yeah. That's a very difficult matchup. That was the 20-yard touchdown he caught last week against Cleveland, where they actually left Denzel Ward because he was the boundary corner for the Browns, just like Tre'Davious White is the boundary corner for Buffalo. But that matchup is really, really difficult when Kelsey's the single receiver. And by the way, when Tyreek Hill is the inside slot receiver to the 3 receiver side, because he runs those deep over routes, those deep crossing routes. He runs away from people.
One of the reasons I like Kansas City this weekend, and I like Buffalo the last month, is that Kansas City's defensive weakness appears to be run defense, and the Bills don't run it. And so I kind of think just schematically, this is not a great matchup for Buffalo. They lost a running back, Moss, a couple of weeks ago, and it's just gotten worse. When you look at film, my gut feeling is the weakness of the Chiefs will not be unveiled by Buffalo, and that's why I like Kansas City.
No, that won't happen in this game. And look, Buffalo makes no bones about it. They're going to throw the ball. They put the game in Josh Allen's hands. The thing that is, everybody talks about Josh's improved accuracy, and that's correct. But the other thing that has stood out is he looks so much more in command during games. They clearly feel that he can control the game, that he's not going to make the kinds of plays he made in his first 2 years where there'd be 3 or 4 plays in a game that you just scratch your head. He's not. It appears that he's past that point, so they feel very comfortable putting the game in his hands.
All right, so give me your big play of the week. This is the Bills' defense, which, by the way, will be challenged. I do think situationally in the red zone, they're very effective. I do think they'll hold Kansas City to a lot of field goals. I do. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game than we all predict, but give me your play of the week.
Well, it's interesting you say that because the Bills are really good in the red zone, but they're defined in the red zone. They play a lot of two shell, cover two, and that's the play we want to show. And let's go to it from last week. It's obviously the interception return for a touchdown by Taron Johnson, and they were in what we call red zone 2, which, as I said, they play this kind of coverage basically more than any team in the NFL when you get into the red zone. And you're going to see here Lamar Jackson is in the shotgun. This is a third down play. Now, he wants to get the ball to Mark Andrews, who's in the inside slot to trips. You're going to see the two split safeties, Hyde and Poyer, who I think is the best safety duo in the league. And then you're going to see Tremaine Edmonds. He's on the line of scrimmage here, but he'll retreat because this is going to be, as I said, a red zone 2 look. And there's Taron Johnson. Now, he's a landmark player. He drops to his spot, and he watches the quarterback. Now, what Lamar Jackson wants to do is get the ball to Andrews. But notice Edmonds is inside of him, so he has to throw it to the outside.